It's been a tumultuous 48 hours in the Northern Territory following the shock resignation of their police commissioner. John McRoberts was only months into his second term in the role when the acting Chief Minister called a snap press conference and declared the government had lost confidence in him. There are allegations the former commissioner interfered in a criminal inquiry concerning a woman he had a close relationship with. John McRoberts insists he has done nothing wrong. Now the government is refusing to comment on whether the NT's former top cop will face further investigation. Kate Wild reports from Darwin.
John McRoberts was a police commissioner who liked the front line and seemed to enjoy getting down and dirty. Known for his stand on transparency, Mr McRoberts dropped a bombshell this week.
I made the decision today to resign, effective immediately, so that the people who I'm so proud of can get on with the important job of keeping people in the Northern Territory safe.
The resignation follows allegations the Commissioner involved himself in a criminal investigation, where his relationship with the subject of that investigation gave rise to a conflict of interest.
The resignation follows allegations the Commissioner played a role in a criminal investigation into a well-known businesswoman he had a close relationship with. The conflict relates to this woman, Xana Kamitsis. The owner of Latitude Travel Agency and chair of Crime Stoppers NT, until she was arrested in November last year while the Commissioner was out of town. The media was tipped off to the time and location of the arrest, a public event now being read as a warning from the police to their Commissioner. Mrs Kamitsis is charged with obtaining benefit by deception for allegedly defrauding a government travel subsidy scheme. The case is ongoing. The ABC understands when police arrested Mrs Kamitsis, they found text messages between her and the Police Commissioner covering a significant period of time. The text messages appear to have contributed to the Commissioner's resignation, although he denies a conflict of interest.
It is important that both the government and the public have confidence in their police commissioner. Their integrity must be beyond reproach. John McRoberts lost my confidence and I acted swiftly as soon as I became aware of the matter.
Rumours had been circulating about the Commissioner, but the Territory is bewildered by the shock resignation.
Obviously, I don't know the details, but a police commissioner resigning is not something that happens every day, so it must have been something interesting. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I suppose it was a bit of a surprise, yeah. He seems to be doing a good job and, yeah, a bit different, isn't it? Coming from someone at that high rank.
When there's allegations of this nature made about senior police members, then that's going to have an effect on morale.
Police will continue to reduce.
Acting Police Commissioner Rhys Kershaw is doing his best to create stability, but today announced a second officer has been stood aside.
The events of the last 2 days have been unfortunate. Yesterday, after being made aware of details surrounding the circumstances which led to the resignation of the former Commissioner, I made the decision to suspend a senior police officer. I took this action to enable a thorough investigation into the matters that were brought to my attention.
A police investigation is underway into the suspended officer, but the Northern Territory government refuses to say whether it is taking any action on the allegations against Mr McRoberts for legal reasons.
Look, I'm not going to give you any more information on that matter.
And the new police leadership are only in place for a month.
Look, I suppose in any circumstance like this, the only way to get public confidence and to reassure them is to make any investigation transparent, so that there can be no allegations of favouritism or cover-ups. So I suppose that is going to be the challenge for the acting Commissioner and indeed the Minister to ensure that that occurs.
The allegations the ABC understands are being levelled at Mr McRoberts are extremely serious. It has been suggested he overruled a search warrant and advocated for civil rather than criminal charges against Mrs Kamitsis in the course of the investigation. But the former Commissioner insists he has done nothing wrong.
I don't accept that I have in any way conflicted myself or indeed interfered with any investigation. Thank you.
I was officer in charge at the police station then, but I've had...
Mark Vacady has been a police officer in the Northern Territory for 35 years.
What has to be remembered is that one of the things that John McRoberts has done is he's cleared the decks to some extent by resigning, and that does make the investigation easier. Had he simply stood down or something like that, it would have made things much more complicated, and some credit has to go to him for that.
The president of the Criminal Lawyers Association, Russell Goldflam, says any investigation into Mr McRoberts' actions should be carried out by a body external to the police.
It needs to be independent of police. Police themselves would be hopelessly conflicted and compromised if they were expected to undertake an inquiry into their former boss. And it needs to be seen to be independent, because at risk here is confidence in the integrity of our legal system, of our criminal justice system.
Kate Wild reporting with producer Jane Barden.
The Chief Minister has tonight tabled the Ombudsman's report into allegations of inappropriate behaviour by former Police Commissioner John McRoberts and another senior police officer. ABC reporter James Oaten is at Parliament House. James, what were the allegations levelled against the former Police Commissioner?
Well, this all goes back to the alleged rorting of a travel concession scheme by the owner of Latitude Travel, Xana Kamitsis. Now, this report indeed gives a fair bit of background into the matter, saying that there was an apparent overpayment of money going into the system, and the Department of Health investigated the matter. That eventuated into a police investigation last year, and as we know, Xana Kamitsis was arrested in November. She's now before the courts facing dozens of fraud-related charges. Shortly after Xana Kamitsis was arrested, we know that John McRoberts, the Commissioner, stood down over allegations he had a conflict of interest in the matter, that he had a relationship with Xana Kamitsis, and he denies those allegations. And shortly after that, we had the former crime commander, Richard Bryson, who also was stood down pending an investigation. Now, that was also that he had over allegations he had a conflict of interest, and since then the NT solicitor has found that indeed Richard Bryson did have a conflict of interest, that he was friends with Xana Kamitsis, and he failed to declare this conflict of interest during the police investigation.
What are some of the findings from the Ombudsman's report?
Well, it looks into the allegations of a conflict of interest, and particularly it says that although this may be the same case, that both these individuals, both Richard Bryson and John McRoberts, were involved in the same case, it says that the Ombudsman is happy, or has concluded that the two did not collude, that they acted separately. So any allegations that there was a conflict of interest, these two senior police officers acted separately.
And briefly, James, has the Ombudsman made any recommendations?
It does, and some of them the police have already acted upon. In particular, it's talking about that there's a review into the procurement of travel services, that it talks about that police should be informed and educated about issues of conflict of interest and ways to avoid, ways to brush up on the police code of ethics. Now, as you know, the police have already announced a special reference unit which will investigate matters of conflict of interest, but as you mentioned earlier, this report was only tabled in Parliament a short time ago, so there's a lot of details to come out yet, Eleni.
Thanks, James. Assistant Police Commissioner of Crime has started giving evidence in the trial of his former boss, John McRoberts. Michael Murphy was the Chief of Staff to Mr McRoberts in 2014, when it's alleged the former Commissioner attempted to pervert the course of justice.
John McRoberts is accused of trying to interfere in a travel agent fraud investigation in 2014, which had marked his intimate friend Xana Kamitsis as its key target. Assistant Commissioner Michael Murphy worked closely with Mr McRoberts at the time, but told court he only observed a professional relationship between the pair. From time to time, we'd see Xana Kamitsis in the Qantas Club. They were purely professional. The Assistant Commissioner told the court he remembered Mr McRoberts declaring he had a friendship with Kamitsis at a morning police briefing in 2014, but said the words didn't go beyond friendship. He told the defence Mr McRoberts had been a hands-on police commissioner, driving change within the force and getting involved in operations. He was a commissioner who would join the men in patrols at various times, and women, yes. Michael Murphy also gave evidence about a meeting Mr McRoberts held with the Australian Federation of Travel Agents in August 2014, before Kamitsis was arrested in November. The court heard that Mr McRoberts told those at this meeting that one of the Territory Government's priorities was tourism, and that if criminal action was launched against 27 travel agents at the same time, this could be crippling. Earlier, the police officer in charge of the fraud squad responded to defence questions about the costly nature of the investigation. I don't think you can put a cost on investigating crime. I believe the public expects police to investigate crime accordingly. The cross-examination of Assistant Commissioner Michael Murphy will continue on Thursday. Felicity James, ABC News.
Guilty of attempting to pervert the course of justice. They found he tried to interfere with a major fraud investigation in 2014 to make sure his affair with the investigation's main target stayed a secret.
John McRoberts was described in court as a dead man walking. His lawyer pleaded with the jury to give his client dignity, but the jury found they couldn't do this.
Was this Mr Roberts you're expecting, Mr McRoberts?
My lawyers have told me not to say anything.
After 9 hours of deliberation, a majority found McRoberts did in fact try to frustrate or deflect a major fraud investigation known as Operation Subotai. That investigation had marked Darwin travel agent Xana Kamitsis as its main target, a woman McRoberts was having a sexual relationship with.
Mr Elliott, is there anything you can say on behalf of your client?
I can't talk.
The prosecution alleged McRoberts' criminal course of conduct began in May 2014 when he raised the idea of an alternative civil approach to Operation Subotai, which was then further developed. It was also alleged he tried to stop a search warrant for Kamitsis before her eventual arrest in November 2014. The current Territory Police Commissioner, Rhys Kershaw, gave evidence in the trial about the moment he confronted McRoberts about his conflict of interest.
So I don't want to comment on the specific intricacies of this particular case, but it has been something that I guess for us it's a closed chapter and we move on.
The judge will hear submissions on sentencing at the end of next month. The charge of attempting to pervert the course of justice has a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison.
And Felicity James has been covering this trial from the beginning and joins me in the studio. Felicity, can you give me a bit more detail about what the jury heard over more than 5 weeks of evidence?
Yes, Eleni. So over 5 weeks, we're into our 6th week now. This jury has sat through evidence from senior police officers who were McRoberts' deputies at the time that he committed this crime in 2014. We also heard from the former Chief Minister, Adam Giles, the former Health Minister, Robin Lamley, and senior bureaucrats at the time who could speak about the meetings McRoberts was involved in where they were also present. We heard Mr McRoberts committed this crime of attempting to pervert the course of justice, and it's a complicated, unusual charge, and it was made up of 9 elements of conduct, and among them were him beginning to promote this civil strategy for this investigation Operation Subotai into 27 travel agents. And what that did was give the travel agents a chance to pay money back after being issued with civil debt notices before overt criminal action was issued against them. And that would, what the prosecution said, stop any search warrant being issued against Kamitsis, who Mr McRoberts was having a relationship with. They said he wanted to keep this secret, and that's what the jury has in fact found. He knew as a senior police officer that if a search warrant was issued against Kamitsis, that they would inevitably find all of these text messages, the thousands of text messages that we've heard about in court.
And Felicity, has there been any reaction to today's verdict?
So we've heard from the current Police Commissioner, Rhys Kershaw. He was asked to comment today, and the current Chief Minister has also made a comment. This is what he had to say.
Well, it's obviously very disappointing to see a former Commissioner found guilty. We now wait for the sentencing, but obviously I think we always want police to follow the evidence wherever it leads, and in this instance, I congratulate them because they've they showed that nothing stops them doing that. But it's obviously always very disappointing to see an officer of the law done for breaking the law.
How do you think this will affect the rank and file?
I think it's a boost of confidence to the rank and file to know that their serving officers follow the law without fear or favour.
So Felicity, where to from here?
So after the finding of guilt this afternoon, the court heard a bail application for McRoberts. He was granted bail and he'll have to appear in court again at the end of June when the lawyers will make submissions on sentencing. And as I mentioned in my previous story, this is a very serious criminal charge which carries a serious penalty of up to 15 years in prison.
The CLP's Dave Tollner is making headlines again, this time accusing the Police Commissioner of being a fly-in, fly-out cop. John McRoberts has angrily denied the claims and says Tollner needs to mind his own business.
It's Tollner versus the top cop and things are getting personal. The rebel MLA taking aim at the Police Commissioner, saying he's not a local.
The fact is that the Police Commissioner moved here without his family. Ultimately, you have to question a person's commitment to the Northern Territory, particularly in a position like that, if they're not prepared to move them to the Territory.
The calls come as Tollner accused the government of failing to support their own campaign to buy local by recruiting senior public servants from interstate. A cranky commissioner pulled the MLA up for his comments on radio today.
I am not, and I repeat, I am not a fly-in, fly-out police commissioner or chief executive officer. I proudly and very happily live in the Northern Territory. Darwin is my home, the Northern Territory is my home, and I fulfil my role and responsibilities from Darwin.
Despite the backlash, Tollner was far from backing down.
Police Commissioner and his deputy haven't brought their families, and I think that is just not good enough. You need to show the commitment to the Northern Territory. I mean, the only memorable thing that this Police Commissioner is known for is wanting to bring in blue uniforms to replace our khaki ones.
His comments have the support of the opposition leader as well.
I think it's a valid observation. A message needs to be sent that there is a complete commitment to the Northern Territory. It's an observation that I agree with, and it doesn't send a good message.
The government says the CLP's position is unacceptable.
What a lunatic proposition from a lunatic CLP to suggest that if your family aren't prepared to move to the Northern Territory, then you're not welcome here in any capacity at all.
The Commissioner and his deputy were both recruited from Western Australia over the last couple of years, but with McRoberts only visiting his old home once this year, he says he's a local and the claims have no substance. Amy Davis, 9 News.
Is the Northern Territory's top cop above the law? A case involving the Police Commissioner has revealed he can't be prosecuted on abusing his position of authority. A magistrate dismissed the case and charges against John McRoberts in Darwin today.
Former police officer Stephen Isles lodged the case against the Northern Territory's top cop, but it's been thrown out of court on a legal technicality.
The matter I brought was arguable on merit, however it's been determined by the court, on a question of law that the Commissioner does not fit within the definition of public service in the Territory.
He accused the Commissioner, John McRoberts, of abusing his authority of office by providing malicious advice to the Queensland Police Service. But the offence under the Criminal Code states the person being prosecuted has to be employed in the public service. Magistrate Sue Oliver dismissed the case because the Police Commissioner is appointed under the Police Administration Act and not classified as a public sector employee.
I think the concerns are a person who is employed or paid or remunerated through the public purse is apparently not accountable to the public.
Stephen Isles has had a long-running feud with the Queensland Police Force over the disappearance of his father, Senior Sergeant Mick Isles, near Townsville in 2009. That case is ongoing, and while he accepts the decision handed down in the Darwin Magistrates Court, he's calling for changes at a higher level.
Legislative change needs to be considered. We can't have a situation that takes us back to, a dictatorship approach.
The Territory Government says it will consider the decision. Louisa Rebgetz, ABC News.
The Northern Territory Police Commissioner says police are not breaching privacy or restricting freedom of the press by accessing journalists' phone records. Police are trying to find out which officer commented to the Northern Territory News about a raid on the home of Darwin Lord Mayor Graham Sawyer last month. The investigation raises broader questions about freedom of speech in the Territory and whether journalists will be able to protect anonymous sources.
Commissioner John McRoberts tried to reassure Territorians today their civil rights were not under threat.
It's got nothing to do with whistleblowing, it's got nothing to do with freedom of the press, nor has it anything to do with police officers legitimately sharing stories with journalists.
Police have accessed the phone records of Northern Territory News journalist Justin O'Brien without notifying him or seeking his permission to find out which officer spoke to him about a raid on the home of Darwin Lord Mayor Graham Sawyer.
We were duty-bound to investigate the allegation of a criminal offence. That is the only reason we checked the record.
Justin O'Brien says it's a breach of his privacy and that of his sources.
I can appreciate the Commissioner is investigating an alleged criminal offence, but I have committed no crime.
Mr Sawyer has been summoned to appear in court next month, charged with firearms offences. His daughter and another woman have been summoned on drugs charges. Police can access any person's phone records using the Telecommunications Interception Act if they're investigating a crime. In this case, they say they're investigating a breach of the Police Administration Act because private details of an ongoing investigation were released. Charles Darwin University law lecturer Ken Parrish says such police techniques go against the spirit of new laws soon to be passed in the federal parliament.
It does go against that principle if we have state and territory governments allowing police willy-nilly to rummage through journalists' telephone records.
For Justin O'Brien, the decision to access his records has wider implications.
The big question is, how many Territorians have had their phone records accessed without their knowledge?
The Commissioner says it's an isolated case, but can't say how often police access phone records as part of investigations. Eric Twarchek, ABC News.
Now to other news, and the Police Commissioner has been accused of double standards when it comes to political advertising. It follows a directive from senior management telling officers not to appear in election campaign material after a senior sergeant appeared in a TV ad for the CLP.
Solomon candidate Natasha Griggs found herself in need of police help today after her campaign ute was deliberately targeted by vandals.
I don't know if this is the sort of publicity that I'd like.
But a campaign commercial featuring Mrs Griggs and her police officer husband,
Natasha Griggs,
has raised eyebrows. Police management have now reissued an email to all officers to not become deliberately involved in an official capacity in the production of material that may be used as part of an individual's political agenda. But at the opening of the Palmerston Shopping Centre police beat, the Police Commissioner was filmed by a Labor Party cameraman walking with the Chief Minister and later speaking with Natasha Griggs' opponent, member for Solomon, Damien Hale.
I can't go about my business and not be filmed with politicians.
The Commissioner also features in this government leaflet promoting May's budget, standing either side of the Chief Minister and the marginal seat member for Fanny Bay, Michael Gunner.
The rules should be consistent for all candidates.
Commissioner McRoberts denies the election campaign email was issued as a result of Labor Party pressure.
I run the police force. I'm responsible for the good governance of the Northern Territory Police.
The heart of the issue is both political parties use photo opportunities with police officers to try to win votes, and the public doesn't distinguish between official and unofficial events. Mrs Griggs says her husband Paul, who is a senior sergeant in the police forensics unit, told Mr McRoberts when he became police commissioner that his wife Natasha would be campaigning for the seat of Solomon.
My husband is a police officer and I'm very proud.
For the record, Natasha Griggs believes the federal election will be held in August. Justin O'Brien, 9 News.